Hello, BookTube. I'd like to do a book tag. It's the Commonplace Book Tag. It's created by the Medieval Reader, and I was tagged by the Medieval Reader. I'll link her station down below. This is a really great book tag. I saw it. I was very excited. And she mentioned the fact she was a little surprised it hadn't been done already, and I have to say I had never thought of it, and but once she said it, I thought, well, she's got a point there. I wonder why it hasn't been done, but it's a great tag. I'm going to do it in two parts. The tag goes this way. It's number one, choose 3 of your favorite quotes, and number 2, explain why each quote is a favorite. And I'm going to start off. She gave a little discussion of commonplace books, and I've kept commonplace books for years. Most of you that are familiar with the channel will see I've always got this when I'm reading out of, and it's a commonplace book. And this one is from June of '95. I've been keeping it, and you can always get an eye. Let's see. I'll try to show you a page that I'll have story ideas. I do little pictures in them, quotes, images that catch my eye. I might tape in. Old pictures are stuck in there. I've used commonplace books. Well, here's commonplace book number 1. I did this in the summer of 1989, and I kept it going until October of 1991. And just to give you an idea, I would tape things in. That inspired me, images that inspired me, story ideas. I do my own little artwork. Some of them, I mean, I look back, I was young. Some of them are almost embarrassing. Let's see. A Robert Frost poem I wrote out by hand just to try to get a feel for the writing of it. So they're ways to work out your thoughts, and they reflect your interest at the time, you know. So that was number 1. That was summer '89 to October '91. Number 2 is 17 October '91 to August 14th '94. Let's see if that was what? How to write a science fiction novel. Let's see. Books read in June and July of '92. So I was keeping lists back then. I've forgotten about that list. You'll probably go back and books read 1993. I don't know how well that's coming out on there. I hope you can see it. That's where I worked out my ideas. So I have lists of short stories I've read, which I don't even keep lists of those anymore. I actually wish I did. So that was number 2. Commonplace book number 3 I kept from 8/31/94 to 6/7/95. So that was right before the green one, I guess. This thing got a little fat because of all the stuff I I taped in a lot of images. Sloppy Joe's Bar on Key West. Maybe a route I took on a map. So, this is stuff I was doing on biography. Placido Domingo. Those of you who saw my shelf tour know who this fella, Tristan Jones. And Sinai. There's St. Catherine's Monastery. So that was number 3. Number 4 is actually, I wrote, it was from 1994. I did a college project where I did a biography of the city of Jerusalem. So this is a lot of notes tracking what I was writing. So here I finished Toynbee's Crucible of Christianity. I wrote that on 18 January 95. Here I'm looking at an image of Jerusalem. I'm hoping you can see that. This is not the best light. Robert L. Wilkins, The Land Called Holy. So here you can see I'm doing quotes from the book so that when I go to write my paper I have all these things. The old image of Jerusalem. And these things, when I was writing, these images that I was saving, informed my writing. So, I'd find these things in old magazines that weren't always in, here's on the Mount of Olives. So here's a big quote from, so it's the First Crusade, Stephen Runciman. And there's a quote I did from his page 9. So here's, I did one from his page 12. So I go through and copy these. These are my Commonplace book. And that's what you do with a Commonplace book. These were postcards I picked up when I was in Russia. So I used them in my Commonplace book. So here I wanted to look up the word thaumaturge or thaumaturgos. So I went to the Oxford English Dictionary. So I would do that. I needed it for some reason. Here's a quote from Will Durant, Caesar and Christ. Eothen by A.W. Kingslake. So this is how I would put together that one paper. So it filled the map of Jerusalem. In the back I kept a bibliography, a couple pages. So Indianapolis, Thomas, Jerusalem, the history of the holiest city is seen through the struggles of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Teddy Kollek, who's the old mayor of Jerusalem, many people remember him. Him and Moshe Perlman did a Jerusalem the history. Louis Mumford, The City in History. Kathleen M. Kenyon. Elie Wiesel, The Beggar in Jerusalem. So there's a whole list of them. So, and then I did one here. This was in 2002. So it's got photographs. So I even put print photos in from where I lived in Bangor, Maine at the time. And then I'd have text. So those are Commonplace books. And again, this is the one I work on now. I'll put in like questions from a book tag. Everybody that watched my Anyway, these are lists of books I've read. So I did it. I did it with a lot of things: quotes, images, lists of books. I stick tons of stuff in these things. Cards, shows I went to, art things I went to. I have tickets, baseball tickets. Here's a ticket to Fenway Park, and there's a postcard that Carlton Fisk sent me years ago, so I just stuck it in there. It's not really meant to be a journal. I mean, it can turn into one. That's fine if that's what works for you. I put in diary entries into them, but for the most part, it's quotes, pieces of writing that I want to remember, that sort of thing. I've been doing it, like I said, for years. My first one was from 1989, so sort of in backwards order. That's what it looks like on my desk when I leave them lying around. And now let's get on to the quotes. So 3 quotes. So the first quote, I've been reading, struggling through Jacques Bresson's biography of Hector Berlioz, the French composer who lived from 1803 to 1869. And it's been a slog. But there's a quote attributed to Berlioz that I just get a kick out of. Time is a great teacher, but unfortunately it kills all its pupils. I remember running into that thing and wow, it's obviously true. That it kills all its pupils. I'm not sure it's always a great teacher. I've met some pretty wise young people and some pretty foolish older people. I mean, it just matters what you do with time, I guess. But there are certain things it tends to teach you, or you don't matriculate long. But so I got a great kick out of that. So for my second quote, I chose Isaiah Berlin. He lived from 1909 to 1997. He's a British philosopher, though he's born in Latvia. I've read quite a bit of his stuff. Actually, I'm probably the next things I'll try to collect are his 4 or 5 volumes of correspondence. I'll have to try to get them out in books. He was a bespectacled Oxford don, not a dashing or romantic figure you would think, but I heard this great story about him, and it was him and Randolph Churchill, Winston Churchill's son, and all were in Russia, World War II. And with the Russian background, Berlin went to see the legendary but sequestered Russian poet Anna Akhmatova. And if you like poetry, I would recommend, even in translation. And they talked, and it's almost like an instantaneous love affair of the mind. Or maybe more, I don't know. But the meeting would not have been to Stalin's liking. And there was a drunk Randolph Churchill down below yelling up for Berlin, and he had to leave the apartment. So it's a story is much more involved than that, but it's worth finding if you can and reading about. But the quote I like is, "There exists a great chasm between those on one side who relate everything to a single central vision, and on the other side, those who pursue many ends, often unrelated and even contradictory. The first kind of intellectual and artistic personality belongs to the hedgehogs, the second to the foxes." So he'll compare writers artists of various kinds, all this. Are they a hedgehog or are they a fox? And you can find a lot of writings about this. People have picked up the question and run with it. Well, there does seem to be these two types of creative types. And the book was The Hedgehog and the Fox, and it was from 1953, so that would be my second quote. And my third quote, now, understand, if I was to do this same tag in a month, I may pick different ones, just like I might pick a different favorite author or piece of music or a movie, because I guess I'm a fox. Or am I a hedgehog? I'm not sure. The third one is Stephen Jay Gould. He was a paleontologist, an American paleontologist. Lived from 1941 to 2002. Wrote some wonderful, wonderful books. Ever Since Darwin, Wonderful Life. What's Panda's Thumb, I think was one. I don't remember them all. But I did really enjoy him, and he'd write these essays on the natural sciences. And here's one he did, Ever Since Darwin, 1977. A man does not attain the status of Galileo merely because he is persecuted. He must also be right. And for short sentences, you can unpack a lot there. I was getting a kick out of it. Everybody may be against your idea because it's not the right idea. And you can read it how you will. But I always enjoyed that one. So, those are my three quotes. A little tour of my Commonplace books. And I'd like to thank the Medieval Reader. This was a good tag. Thank you, BookTube.